Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. We're just going to give it a few minutes as everyone piles in, and yeah, we'll be kicking off in a minute. As you are joining, though, we'd love to hear where you're tuning in from. So please jump into the chat box at the bottom of your screen and let us know your closest town and your name. Got Tim from Young, New Zealand, Menindee, Barraba. Looks like we've got a good spread. Doug McNichol from Delaca. Hi, Doug. Okay, looks like we have a decent number of people who have joined the session so far, and everyone else can catch up, but we may as well get into it. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today for our webinar. My name is Amber Woods, and I'm the head of marketing here at AgriWebb. I've been with AgriWebb for about 5.5, nearly 6 years now, and I'm based out at Rowena in northwest New South Wales, where it is sprinkling away at the moment. We're at about 35 mils so far this week, which is absolutely lovely. It hasn't rained pretty much all year. So I hope those of you that need the rain are getting it. But I'm really excited for this afternoon's session. We are very lucky to be joined by Amy Rogers, who is a customer of ours from Victoria, and very lucky as well to be joined by Jeremy Hutchings from Farm Owners Academy. So the session today is really around the idea of performance and getting your head around performance to profit. And we wanted to tie it in with end of financial year, which is obviously just around the corner. Amy's been a customer of ours for a couple of years. She's also a member of Farm Owners Academy. So we thought it'd be a really good opportunity to pick her brain on just a couple of the kind of tools, techniques, and changes that she's been able to implement to improve her farming business since using AgriWebb and becoming a member of Farm Owners Academy. So the rough agenda of today, we'll just do my welcome, which you've just heard, and then I'm going to give you a very quick overview of AgriWebb for those on the call that haven't heard of us before, or perhaps this is your first webinar. Hutch will then just give us a quick overview of FOA, and then we're going to do a fireside conversation with Amy. So we really want Amy to be the focus of the call today. And then we'll finish up with a Q&A. So at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little Q&A function. If you can't see it, it's a weird update thing. So please feel free to use the chat as well. We'll keep an eye on this throughout the session, but we will have a Q&A at the end of the webinar today. So please feel free to send through any questions that you might have for Amy, Hutch, or myself. So to give you a very quick intro to AgriWebb, we are livestock management software. Our mission is to empower the livestock industry with the best tools to feed the world sustainably, profitably, and efficiently. Couple of high-level stats. We're very proud of these. We've got just over 23 million animals under management globally at the moment, over 18,000 farmers globally, 150 million plus acres. Very small churn rate, which we're particularly proud of. People join AgriWebb and they stick around. And we're bringing on over 100 farms every single month. So we are growing and proud of it. And really, what are we trying to do? Our main mission is just to provide value to producers. Our motto here at AgriWebb is to live for the farmer. And so every day we are trying to really provide that value to the farmer by simplifying farm management, eliminating compliance pain, and improving overall farm performance. So that's us in 30 seconds. Hutch, I'll hand over to you now to do a brief intro to yourself and Farm Owners Academy.
Thanks, Amber, and thanks for the opportunity, and glad to know you're getting some rain. Much needed.
It's incredible.
Yeah, so my name's Jeremy Hutchings. I'm Managing Director at Farm Owners Academy. We're 10 years old and we see ourselves as leaders in entrepreneurial education, business coaching, and analytics for farming families. We've got 350 farming families now going through our 3-year business coaching masterclass. And they're supported in a lot of ways, but I guess a key way that is relevant to today, I think, is benchmarking, analytics, and decision support. And I guess that's made so much easier with the members we work with when they're working with groups like AgriWebb to manage their on-farm production and operational data. We're a team of 40 very passionate professionals and farmers. And like AgriWebb, we are here to help farming families achieve more profit, more control, and more freedom. So many farming families that we work with have successful businesses, but they're completely dependent on the owners. So that if anything happened to any of the owners, or if the owners wanted to take a 4 or 6 or 8 week holiday, their business wouldn't run for them. And so part of how we try and help is to help them build businesses that are highly profitable, that are systemized, resourced, and structured so that the farms work for their families, not the other way around. Thanks, Amber.
Thanks, Hutch. Great intro. So now we'll move on to the sort of fireside discussion portion of the webinar, the main attraction. Before we jump into that conversation, Amy, I'd love to hand over to you just to give us a quick intro to who you are and your operation. And just thank you again so much for joining us today. We're very lucky to have you here.
Thanks, Amber. I'm glad to be here. So, hi everyone, my name's Amy Rogers. I'm a 4th generational beef and sheep producer from down in Gippsland in the high country. We're running over 980 hectares with about 400 cows calving and 1,000 first cross ewes, so very traditional property, running that with my partner Alfred, and my mum is still in the business at the moment. So, we joined AgriWebb in May 24. We went up to Rockhampton to Beef Australia and got talking to the guys in the tent up there and signed up. And we joined Farm Owners starting the Platinum Mastermind in July last year. So, it's been great working with both businesses so far.
Thank you for that overview, Amy. And I've actually just had a brainwave that I think I met you in person at Beef 2024. So there you go. We will be at Beef next year as well. For anyone who wants to come and say hello, please feel free to pop your head into the tent. Okay, well, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now. And Amy, just while I'm bringing up our questions, we had a quick conversation before we joined the session about your morning this morning, and I thought it might be kind of an interesting little anecdote to kick off our fireside conversation.
So, this morning we've just had our financial consultant and agronomist here for our monthly meeting that we've been having with our business, and just looking at numbers. And I actually asked our financial consultant, who deals with a lot of businesses across our region, the difference in farmers who know their numbers and have accurate records compared to the ones that don't. And he said it's just great that he can ring me up at any time and just say, right, what are the numbers, plug it into this gross margin spreadsheets or our budgets, and knowing that cost of production is it's very valuable for him. And he said it saves him lots of time, and he knows that it's accurate data going in. I'm not just making it up.
That's awesome. And I thought it was quite funny. Amy was saying that she said it was probably terrible timing to have that visit this morning before a webinar because her brain was swirling a little bit. And I was thinking, actually, that I think that ties in quite nicely with what we're planning on talking about today. So it's meant to be, I think, Amy.
Yeah.
Good. On that note, I guess to dive in, I'd love to wind back a little bit and talk about what life on farm was like for yourself and Alfred and your mum before you joined AgriWebb in 2024, and then as well what it was like before you became a member with Farm Owners Academy.
I think before AgriWebb and Farm Owners, I think we were looking at it more as just a lifestyle as a farm, not as a business. We had a rough guess of our numbers. We're not a huge operation, but yeah, now I know what my numbers are, like even numbers, not just stock numbers, but your preg testing records, your marking records, those sort of numbers, weights, knowing your withholds after you've treated an animal, knowing what they are all the time. To be honest, we did not record our treatments, paddock treatments, that sort of thing. We were shocking. I was always really worried if we had an LPA audit or something of what was I going to do, because the records did not exist. So I think that was us, really not worrying about profit. We didn't know like our benchmarking data, our like gross margins, cost of production. We didn't know any of those KPIs in our business. It was very much just a lifestyle, but now we're really looking at it as a business, and it needs to be profitable.
That's awesome. And just to follow on from that, since becoming a member of Farm Owners Academy, kind of what are a few of the things that your operation was looking like before that, and maybe a few of the things since becoming a member that are different?
I think just that professionalism around your business, the meetings, the planning, the benchmarking, diving into the numbers, I think is the key thing. And that's where like AgriWebb comes in handy, just knowing the numbers, having them at the click of a button. I think just knowing it, I think, and accurately is the key.
Yeah, awesome. And throw to you, Hutch. Any comments on that?
Well, I think two things. One, I think farm families like Amy's and Alfred's that start with us often, and based on what she's described, we're reactive. And often with minor and medium and even major decisions, sometimes we're guessing. And when we're in that construct, we can feel like we're out of control. The two levers I think that we get to pull as business owners to really feel like we're in control, and we feel great when we feel like we are, is to know our numbers, I think, at a production level and at a whole of business level, and know how that compares to best practice and where the gaps are. And the second one then is to have that inform a plan that does give us real clarity as a family around our direction. And I know Amy and Alfred have lent into those two constructs with us so strongly that they're aligned to a common improvement plan for their farm that's backed by numbers, that they know their numbers at a whole of business, at an enterprise, and then at an operational level. And, I think what I sense, Amy, is that you feel so much more in control now, and so much more proactive perhaps than reactive as a business owner.
Definitely. And I think also now having like the second year of data in AgriWebb, we're actually seeing trends. So I think every year that you're involved, you're building that data and the trends in your business and seeing what the changes you're making, what impacts they have on those trends in the data.
I think that's a really important point, Amy, is that some benchmarking compares you to other farms. That's interesting, but my fitness compared to your fitness is just interesting, isn't it? But what's more important is comparing your business to what the top 10% in the industry are doing, and making sure that year on year the trends around the ratios that are critical are moving in the right direction. And that's I guess something that gives people real confidence.
Definitely.
And on that note, Amy, just to dig in a little bit, it sounds like you guys are using a fair chunk of AgriWebb and regularly, which is awesome to hear. But are there kind of two or three things, during a normal week that you're making sure that you're always recording or checking in AgriWebb? Are there two things that really make your life easier?
I think the things that I always record, obviously paddock treatments and animal treatments. With running trade lambs and things, the agent can ring me and he's like, oh, when are we booking that next lot of lambs in? I can quickly look and go, right, well, they're out of withhold on this date, so it's got to be, kill date after that. I find that extremely valuable. I think the other thing that I'm always checking is our inventory of treatments and like pesticides and herbicides, because we live an hour and a half away from our nearest rural store. So in the past, if you're in town and you had no idea what you had in stock, you'd just be buying stuff that you either didn't need and you already had plenty of. And I know when I first started with AgriWebb, there was multiples of everything in the chemical shed that I was entering, and that's why, because we didn't know what we had. Whereas now I can just whip out my phone while I'm standing in Elders and say, oh, okay, I don't have enough 5-in-1 to mark those calves next week. I know how many. I can look at the mob and go, this is how many I've got, this is how much I need. So I'm not buying more than I need, I'm not wasting products, and I just don't have that volume of products sitting around anymore. I think that's really valuable. I think they're probably the two main things. Just our and any stock deaths or reasons why I cull animals, and I'm big on entering why. Like if I lose sheep, is it from lambing difficulties or a wild dog attack? And at the end of the year, I actually tally up what our biggest reasons for death was, like looking at it, is that a leakage for my business? Can I do something like that's like being proactive for the next year? How can I stop some of that leakage out of my business?
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And Hutch, I'm sure you'd be happy to jump in there on that leakage, identifying areas where maybe you are having that leakage in your business. Is there anything that you would add to that comment?
Well, the principle there is key, I think, that we've got to be efficient, especially in today's climate as farm owners. And the only way to drive efficiency, or the best way to drive efficiency, is to remove waste. And so if we can be quantifying and monitoring across any normal year where the waste is, then efficiency is the opposite of removing that. So having that level of data, not just knowing that your deaths were 4%, but knowing that 1.8% of that came from dog attacks, then that informs your strategic plan, doesn't it, for the next year? It's a great point, Amy.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Amy, you touched on accuracy of data and making sure that you are compliant. I'd love to dig into the compliance piece a little bit. And you mentioned fear of LPA audits earlier as well. I know we spoke last week on the phone for a little bit, and you'd actually left the sheep yards, I think it was sheep yards or maybe cattle yards, to have the conversation with me, which I thought was hilarious. And I definitely would have gotten in trouble for doing the same thing. So you're a brave woman. But you had a very funny anecdote to share with me, or an interesting anecdote to share with me around your experience with audits, and just having that reliable data kind of at the touch of a button since joining AgriWebb. I'd love you to share that with the audience if you're happy to.
Yeah, so early last year we had a targeted LPA audit, and the lady who did the audit was very, very thorough. To say the least, I was very, very nervous about the day. So I'd spent a bit of time just making sure all my chemical records were up to date and like everything was right in AgriWebb and accurate. And the day come and she was very to the point, and she started asking for all our MVDs and everything, and I had all that online. And then she said, oh, whereabouts is your record? So I just whipped out the laptop, shoved it in front of her with AgriWebb on it. And pretty much she's like, oh, so you've got AgriWebb. That's great. So just tick, tick, tick. And pretty much she didn't look into it anymore. I think just the fact that it was there ticked all the boxes. And I think that showing that I had all that professionalism with my records and AgriWebb, the rest of the audit process was actually pretty good. She really changed her tune towards us. I think, just that.
Oh, might have lost Amy there for a second. Is that for you as well, Hutch, or is that just with my...
Yeah, I've lost Amy as well, Amber.
Oh, I'm I'm sure she'll be back in a minute. While Amy's oh, here she is.
Sorry, I'm back.
She's back.
Apologies for my internet. So yeah, the audit was actually really painless and it was great. So I think if I hadn't have had AgriWebb, I would have spent days, getting records and doing all this stuff and pretty much making stuff up. So the stress and the time that it saved me, I think, paid for the year subscription then and there. Like, it was fantastic.
Oh, that's so awesome to hear, Amy. Thank you for sharing that story. That's exactly the kind of thing that we love to hear. Again, just leaning back into, we don't just want to create tech that's sitting there. We want to create tech that's really providing value to our farmers. So that's a great example of that. Thank you for sharing. Hutch, did you have anything you want to add around kind of end of financial year and outside of that, even just sort of stressful periods of time like being audited, that you would add?
Well, it's now no longer an option. If we've been running our businesses that way for the last 20, 30, 140 years, you might have got away with it, but there's no point waiting until a compliance group or a supply chain or other enforce it on us. We're going to be better businesses. And in the podcast that I did with John, your founder, just the other day, Amber, he kind of spoke to this as well, that if you are that professional, yes, you can get through an audit seamlessly, but you're going to be more available to better marketing, better niche supply, and other opportunities than the business that isn't. So if we want to be efficient, tick. If we want to get a premium down the road, perhaps, or be exposed to new markets that aren't available yet, that's only going to happen if you've got professional records and that you're running your business professionally. So I would just suggest that what Amy's describing is now no longer an option. And if you're not into it and onto it now, then we should be.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to kind of jump into a little bit more, and we're sort of heading that direction naturally, which is awesome. But tying AgriWebb and Farm Owners Academy thinking together, Amy, and just perhaps some advice that you would give to other producers regarding that. So, my first question would be sort of what Farm Owners Academy ideas have changed the way that you've been able to use AgriWebb and I guess see the data that you're capturing in AgriWebb differently.
I think around the planning, the strategic planning side of it is it's invaluable in that. In our business, we are having monthly meetings with our financial consultant, and as well as weekly sort of team meetings and that sort of thing. I know when we have our monthly meetings, I've always got AgriWebb on the screen, like our sales screen, what we've sold, the weights, that sort of thing, where we're personally in our business, we're very focusing on cost of production and that sort of thing. So having all that data there is great. Yeah, and I think the time management is probably the biggest thing. I know beforehand, like to get my end of financial year, births, deaths, natural increase to the accountant, it could take me a day going through notebooks, and because you'd have 3 different lots of records and you try and bring them together and there'd be duplications, and I would be literally tearing my hair out. And I'm like, there's probably better things I could do with my time, definitely, than this. Now it is literally go in and do your livestock reconciliation in AgriWebb, and you may have missed 1 or 2 dead sheep, but you are so close, and literally takes 10 seconds. I think that time management piece is, and it's not just in that, it's also at the end of the day, like it's not even having to reach for the book, it's just automatically moving stock, doing your treatments. It's quick, it's easy, and it's sharing amongst the team. Like, I enter it, Alfred can see it. So, there's no miscommunication. The communication's good. I find that probably the most valuable.
Yeah,
Amber,
Hutch,
can I?
I'd love to throw to you on that point.
Yeah. So you mentioned, Amy, that the planning's been of value. What did your plan look like 3 years ago, and just give us an insight as to some of the elements of that plan that you have now that are most helpful.
We didn't have any plans 3 years ago. We didn't even have a budget. We didn't know any numbers. So I think now our plan's still very much a work in progress. Now we have set goals. We're trying to be accountable. Like, that's the point of our monthly meetings, is we're accountable. And yeah, we're having more goals, and our planning is great now, like with everything. And even the tasks in AgriWebb, we put tasks in to keep ourselves accountable, to remind ourselves that this is what we should be doing. So it's, our planning has completely done a backflip from no planning to, I probably over plan now, but that's another thing. I know that I'm analytical, so I love a list. So the task section in AgriWebb is really good for me.
Amber, if I can just contribute there. So often farming families, the plan is in someone's head. And if it's in my head, no one can help me make it happen. And the plan, all 350 businesses going through our 3-year program, they've all got a 2-page plan. It's not the 60-page plan that you wrote for the bank 3 years ago that's collecting dust in the cupboard. And it's not the plan that your agronomist gave you about what pastures to put in this year. It's a concise 2-page plan. And I use the analogy, it's like building a fence. You've got to know where you are. You've got to know where you're wanting to go. And let's say that's 3 years from now. They've got to be rock solid. And once you've got those solid, then it's where do we need to be? So the one out here is sort of a BHAG. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal from 30 or 40 years from now. We're going to double or triple the size of our farm, and it has to be lofty and inspiring and enrolling. Then once we've got that, we need a 10-year goal. Then we need a 3-year goal, and then we need a 1-year goal. And it's like looking out your window at 3 horizons. You need to define where you're going to be on the top of each of those horizons. Once you've got your 1-year plan in place, then we hold our members all accountable with a coach and a monthly meeting to implementation each quarter. So we break the year down into 4 quarters. And it's been proven that if you plan quarterly, you achieve 7 times more as a business than those businesses that plan annually. So we have a quarterly planning meeting, and once you've got your quarterly plan, then the next 12 weeks of that quarter is all about implementation on the plan. And so that's where our coaches come in to help families like Amy set down that goal cascade, if you like, get that quarterly rhythm and weekly rhythm in place. And then our coaches are on board holding Amy, for example, and Alfred accountable to implementing on what they said they were going to do. And you mentioned accountability before, Amy. It's really hard to hold yourself accountable. It's hard for me. It's hard for everyone. But having someone, no one holds us accountable in business. Really, we get to do what we like when we like. And so bringing in that layer of accountability, I think, is where implementation and the rubber hits the road around the success of a good plan.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Hutch. That's great insight. We don't have a ton of time left, and there's one area I wouldn't mind digging into a little bit with you, Hutch, and Amy. Please feel free to jump in where you see fit. But Amy has touched on a little bit of this idea of having a profit focus and being a little bit more strategically minded when it comes to decision making for your farming business.
Yeah.
Do you mind jumping into that a little bit, Hutch, and kind of outlining some of the FOA ideas and, I guess, mindsets and processes that you encourage for your members?
100% happy to, and encourage people to write a few of these things down. There's just a few ratios I want to share in this. Firstly, and coming back to a comment you made, Amy, with AgriWebb in place, if you plan around an annual calendar or a financial year or something else, knowing your opening and closing inventory and your performance in between becomes really simple. If we can grab that data out of AgriWebb and we can grab the key financial data, then you can do a really strong benchmark. And for families like Amy, that data comes together quite quickly. Having AgriWebb in place, if we're running cropping and livestock, 3 or 4 enterprises, for example, that benchmark can then be, and we call it a business model analysis, not a benchmark, because benchmark has the wrong connotation. But you can then analyze the performance of each enterprise really quite efficiently. Without AgriWebb, as you said, Amy, it's a shooting match, and the data that you're analysing won't be accurate. But to answer your question, Amber, every year those businesses that are working with us get benchmarked at a whole farm level. Coming up to the end of financial year, a lot of them are getting their numbers together now on the back of this financial year so that they can report to the accountant and the tax office, sure, but more importantly, understand how they're performing and how they can improve for next year. And we benchmark at a whole farm, at a per enterprise, and at a cost of production level. So per kilo wool, per kilo meat, or per tonne of wheat output. The key metrics that I think we need to be focusing on, the top 10% in our industry are achieving a 5% return on assets managed. So that's a 5% profit on the land that they own and operate, owned and leased. So I'd love you to write down 5% ROAM. That is after a commercial wage for the family owners, and it's before interest. But it's after all operating and overhead costs in the business. Now, the top 10% are achieving that in the current economic climate. So if they can, why can't the rest of us? But if you don't know that number, the way you'll measure your performance is probably just on what's in the bank. And that's not good enough. So the first metric, and it is harder to achieve given that land values have gone up, is 5% return on assets managed. The second number is 30% profit on income. So if I'm doing a $1 million income in my farm business, I should be pursuing $300,000 profit after paying myself and before interest. So they're the two numbers that the top 10% are achieving. So it's really important to know where you are relative to that. And then the third layer of numbers, I think, come down to the numbers that AgriWebb helps us know, which is what are the 3 or 4 key drivers in my enterprise, my livestock enterprise, that are going to see me achieve those whole farm metrics as an outcome. And stocking rate is the key driver of profit in a livestock enterprise, weaning rates next, and then there are others for each of our respective enterprises. And Amy mentioned cost of production as one of the keys. Are the critical things that help us make sure that the outcome is that we're hitting those 2 global metrics. So I hope that's at least started to answer that question, Amber. And there's a few others that I think are interesting that sit around that, but they're the key ones.
No, that's an excellent overview. Thank you. And for anyone who's listening who wasn't able to write quickly enough, we will be sharing the recording of this session, but I'll also make sure I get a few of those high-level data points, I guess, to share in the follow-up of the webinar.
We've got an ebook that outlines the 17 key ratios that we think every farm owner needs to know and measure. So we could share that in the follow-up notes as a giveaway if that's helpful.
That sounds awesome. Thanks, Hutch.
Pleasure.
Lots of happy campers on the call to hear that, I'm sure. Well, look, we don't have a ton of time left. We'd like to finish up in a few minutes, but to sort of start closing us out, Amy, we've spoken a lot today about kind of mindset shifts since joining AgriWebb, challenges and pain points before AgriWebb and Farm Owners Academy, and how you've gotten to where you are today. Obviously, there are a lot of challenges and, pieces of adversity from A to B there. What would you say to someone who is probably in the start of their technology, thank you, Binder, for saying it's a game changer, start of probably, start of this process of shifting their mindset, and who perhaps would say that they don't have time or the energy or dollars. I know you spoke about that earlier as well. What would sort of your advice be to the person who's at that start of that journey?
And I understand how someone would feel like that. I was a bit like that at the start. I'm like, is it really worth the money and all this sort of thing? And it was probably actually Alfred that was like, no, I really think we should. I think we knew someone else who was on AgriWebb. So, it's quite simple to use. I love that you don't have to have phone service. That's great because one of our sets of yards, we have no phone service, so you can still use it. So, that's not a barrier. It is simple. I love that you can use it either on the computer or your phone. I think it is, and I will admit, when you first get it, the hardest part is setting up your farm, mapping out the paddocks, putting on all the water troughs, the gates. The gates are probably the most complex thing I found. Setting up your stock, all that sort of stuff, putting all your paddock treatments and animal health treatments into the inventory. But once you've done it, it's easy. Like once you've taken that step, and a few weeks ago, I actually had a friend who's had AgriWebb for a couple of years and hasn't been using it. And I said, right, let's get together. We sat down over a cup of coffee and I actually helped her. I think it took us 3 hours. We entered all of her data in and she's like, you know what? So unless you come here and did this with me, I wouldn't have done it. I would have just kept paying the subscription and not using it. So sometimes if you know someone who's already using it, reach out. They might be able to come and help you. Just spend that, dedicate 3 or 4 hours, set it up, get it rolling, and you don't have to make it complicated. Mine is super simple. It is just mobs of cows. They're autumn cows, they're spring cows, they're autumn lambers, or they're twins, the bulls. It's not complicated. Don't make it any more complicated than it needs to be for your business. And I think that helps, but take the time at the start to set it up properly. And, you can call, there's the helpline, AgriWebb will help you too. But yeah, I'd reach out if you've got another farmer who uses it, is competent with it, give him a call and say, hey, would you mind coming over and giving me a hand? I'm sure, there'd be people out there to help you. Because once it's set up and you get in the habit of, when you go to town and buy some drench or some vaccine, or, the truck comes with some Roundup on it, just enter it in straight away. As soon as you get that invoice from Elders or Nutrien, enter in the batch numbers and the price and everything else and where it come from. Once it's in and it's done. I think it's just taking that time to set it up and get those habits. Once it's done, it's not that hard. I know it's daunting, but yeah, I think, and the cost, I think now you don't look at it as a cost, it's an investment. Like Hutch said, we are in Greenham's Never Ever program and their sustainability program, JBS Farm Assurance. So with having the accurate records and doing all that, it's 10 cents a kilo more for your beef that you sell through Greenham's. It's all those things, and you can, that's how I justify it. And it's the time, you've got to put a value on your time. Instead of spending all that time going through notebooks, you could be doing strategic planning, those $100 an hour jobs instead of $30 an hour jobs or more. So I think that's how you've got to look at it in a different light as the cost as well.
Thank you, Amy. And Hutch, I guess I'd throw to you there. I can see a big smile on your face because I'm hearing some FOA kind of principles shine through there in what Amy's just shared. But would you like to kind of double down on anything or call out any of those pieces in particular?
Well, Amy has mentioned the importance of valuing our time a couple of times and time management. We're all busy and there's always an endless list of things to do, but I would argue busy doing what? We often get so entrenched doing inefficient and low value activities that we're not being the CEO to our business. We talk a lot about slowing down to speed up at FOA, and what that means is slowing down and actually taking the time to get AgriWebb set up. It might take a day or two to get it set up with gates and troughs, as Amy says, but once you do, that small investment of time up front is the upside of that allocation of time in terms of time saving and opportunity just completely outweighs. So to challenge people who think they're too busy to make something like this a priority, to really just reflect on, am I busy? So in business, there's business, there's doing business, and there's doing busyness, and they're two very separate things. And our businesses are sophisticated, they're complex, they've got to be high performing, and they've got to return profitably for our families and grow. Which means we've got to be doing business and investing in technologies like AgriWebb that get us out of the busyness. I could stay on my soapbox for hours on this one, Amber, but I hope that's a reasonable and appropriately challenging comment for our listeners.
That's excellent. Thank you, Hutch. I would just like to do a quick call out. We're going to wrap up in a few minutes. So if anyone does have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A or in the chat at the bottom of your screen. But in the meantime, I'm just going to reshare my screen. And Hutch, I'll just throw over to you for a second to talk to us about your upcoming workshops.
So firstly, Amy, just wanted to congratulate you on the way you've lent into the support of AgriWebb and FOA. You just make such a great example of someone who has gone from quite amateur to professional in how you're running your business, and reactive to proactive, and that's just completely a function of your leadership. So well done. We do have a 2-day top producer workshop coming up 22nd and 23rd of June on the Gold Coast. We do this twice a year in Australia. We did it in New Zealand a couple of weeks ago. It is getting you off farm and giving you the opportunity to go deep into the mindset, the numbers, the planning, the time management, the systems development, the recruitment, the leadership, gosh, and the list goes on, constructs that we've got to get in place to really take our farms to the next level, and to pursue profit and pursue true best practice conduct. So if that interests you, we'd just love to share the way to register to that in the show notes, Amber, or in the follow-up email. So by all means, take a photo now if you want. And also, if you want to book in for a coaching call with our team, there's a QR code that allows you to do that. We'd love to have a conversation about how we might support you and your family. Thanks, Amber.
Thanks, Hutch. Before I jump on to closing out the call, I wanted to point out that we have 2 questions in the Q&A, but they're both pretty specific to AgriWebb product. So I've noted those down and I'll get back to you via our product team this afternoon. But yes, before I jump on to our closing slide, I did just really want to thank Hutch and Amy for joining us today. It's an excellent conversation. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm feeling very energized after our conversation. Amy, thank you so much, especially to you. It is just incredibly valuable for us to have a customer come on a webinar and give up your lunchtime as well to talk about AgriWebb and Farm Owners Academy. And yeah, we really appreciate your time, and thank you for speaking so highly of AgriWebb and using the product so well. And I think I might have to put your mobile number at the end of the follow-up email this afternoon, and you might be on a few setup calls after your call out this afternoon. I wanted just to share as well, just as we're wrapping, kind of 2 really interesting takeaways to me from what Hutch shared today. One of them was just around the quarterly planning. It seems really simple, but I just thought that was really interesting, Hutch, around, I think you said 7 times more effective to plan quarterly than annually. That's absolutely remarkable to me, and a small takeaway, but definitely so interesting, and something that is pretty easy to implement across all of our farming businesses. So that was one. And the other one, leaning more towards AgriWebb, but definitely a Farm Owners Academy sort of principle, is just investing in getting away from being busy. So putting the time in now so that you don't have to be putting as much time in down the track. And I think, ultimately that's what both Farm Owners Academy and AgriWebb are hoping to help our producers achieve, is just more efficiency in managing their businesses. So thank you for both of those takeaways, Hutch, and we'll make sure we do include that booklet that you mentioned as well. And then just to close us out, before I will let you all get back to work or hopefully get back to your rain day, I want to thank you all for joining our session and just mention that we have decided to do a little kind of flash sale for those of you that are on the call. If you'd like to join AgriWebb or upgrade your plan before midnight tomorrow, please get in touch with our sales team. This is sort of a thank you to our new Farm Owners Academy audience who we've been able to get in front of thanks to the 2 podcast episodes that Hutch has just released with one of our founders, John Farger. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to those, it's episode 191 and 192. And the second one of those episodes only came out on Friday morning. So really interesting calls. Amy had mentioned Amy had mentioned that she's listened to both already, which was awesome to hear. But yes, we would just like to offer that discount to anyone that might be interested. And then just from an admin point of view, you will have a recording of this session in your inbox this afternoon, as well as all the goodies that we've mentioned today. So thank you all for joining. Really appreciate you for giving up your lunchtime to hang out with us. Thank you again to Amy and Hutch, and we look forward to seeing you all on the next webinar.
Thanks for the opportunity, Amber, and well done, Amy. Great to connect.
No worries. Glad to come on and share.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. We'll see you next time.